All right. Welcome to the Upstream Podcast, brought to you by Element Longevity. My name is Darren Beckett, CXO at Element Longevity, and this is the show where we look upstream of the symptoms, upstream of burnout, upstream of, I guess this is just how it is, and ask better questions about health, performance, and living well for longer. Today's conversation is something we're calling train your gut. And I love that phrase because it changes the way we think about digestion and gut issues, right? Your gut isn't just something that behaves or misbehaves, it adapts. It responds to stress, food, sleep, training, recovery, travel, competition, and consistency. And athletes give us one of the clearest windows into that process. When the body is under load, small cracks show up faster, fueling problems show up, recovery problems show up, gut issues show up. And often, those signals are not random, they're information. So today, I'm joined by Dr. Cora Wright, a sports medicine doctor who works with athletes and understands what happens when performance, recovery, injury risk, and whole body resilience all intersect. We're going to talk about what athletes can teach the rest of us about gut health, how to think about fueling under stress, what people often miss when they're trying to eat healthy, and how to build a more resilient body from the inside out. Dr. Wright, welcome to the Upstream Podcast. All right. So before we get into the athlete side of this, I'd love to start with your lens as a sports medicine doctor. When an athlete comes in and says, I just don't feel right, Dr. Cora, what are you listening for beneath the obvious complaint?
The first thing that we always have to triage is, was there a moment of trauma? And if there wasn't, most of the time, it's something that's been building and additive and not necessarily addressed until the body was screaming at them to address it. So we look at things from a perspective of, where are you at in your training protocol? Who designed your training protocol? Did you do it or did a coach do it? How up on current research is the person who's developing it? And at what point did things start to go wrong? Because it's not typically within a day or so or when they made the appointment, it's been building for a while. So, what I tend to address is, bring me back. What have we been doing for the last 6, 8, 10, 12 weeks? What's going on with your body now as compared to how it was then? So, we like to think of our bodies as component parts, and that, like, oh, my hamstring hurts. Okay, but let's say as a soccer player, did you do something dynamically that hurt that hamstring? Or has it been gradually getting worse? And at what point do we have physiological breakdown because of something that we've been doing? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, decades ago when I was first working with athletes to, repair from injuries, we used to say it's, grandma doesn't fall because it was that one moment, right? She fell because the body has done that bad patterning thousands and thousands of times, and now it can't handle that anymore. And I love where you're going around the kind of cumulative effect, because often when people do see a challenge in their life, whether it's an athlete looking to perform better and getting quote unquote injurious before they have the event, or there's stress, right? The experience is that they often look at that one moment. What did I do differently? What was it that I did that hurt me, or why that injury happened? And or for the gut challenge, right? Like, oh my gosh, my digestion is bad. What did I eat? What is that wrong? And what I love about what you're saying is that is just a piece of the puzzle. We need to look back. We need to better understand the habitual patterns that lead up to those moments. And so for the athlete, right, it's okay, what is my training block? As you said, who is designing that training block, and is there research to support the training block? But let's get into the gut microbiome, because it's like looking into the universe and seeing a bunch of stars, you're like, where do I start? Right. And so, you use the example of the hamstring, but you just recently went through uh, a little bit of a flu experience. And so, and you were just telling me, like, I don't get sick that often, but I got a notice. And you said, this has been building. So maybe you want to just play off of that real quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. So we like to think of, oh, this happened to me. Yet my body created well, truly my behavioral patterns created the environment to where I was able to get sick. So I worked too much, got too much stress, wasn't sleeping enough, was exercising and pushing too hard. And then when I ran into a, family party where there was someone with the stomach flu, it hit me like a brick, right? I was still eating well. I was still taking my vitamins and supplementation and probiotics. However, the rest of what I had been doing leading up to that incident made it so that I was more vulnerable. When we think of our bodies from a terrain theory, it's not just, oh, I encountered this virus or bacterium or any other sort of insult. It's how prepared was my body to respond to it? And my husband and I were at the same party together. We eat the same things, we do the same things, but he's much better about maintaining sleep and water and stress. I mean, he didn't get sick and I did. And it's all additive. And it was not great.
I'm glad you're feeling better.
Thank you. Yeah, we're back.
Honestly, it's
But
never something we want to go through, but what a great moment for education, right? Because I'm sure a lot of the listeners listening to this podcast are thinking the same thing, right? What's the thing I can do to prevent this? And so, I guess two questions. One, can you prevent these things? And two, what's the gut's role in your opinion with this process of resilience, recovery, energy, and performance?
well, we can prevent it to the best of our ability, right? Can't control everything as much as we'd like. But what we can do is prepare ourselves as best as possible by eating well, sleeping well, drinking good amounts of water, getting sunlight and fresh air. You do the best that you can so that whenever you do encounter things, your body can tolerate it better. From a gut perspective, like 70 to 80% of our immune system is created within our GI tract. So having a environment that is processing nutrients well, that is breaking nutrients down, that doesn't have large amounts of inflammation or swelling within the gap junctions of our stomach lining allows our body to be able to take the nutrients that you're feeding it, to take in the water, to take in all of these good things that you're fueling your body with so that you can utilize them in protecting yourself. There's no point in like, "Oh, I'm gonna eat well for 3 days," if you've been eating poorly for 3 weeks beforehand, because those cells within your GI tract take 3 weeks to turn over and heal and allow the permeation of good nutrients in. So, it's all building, right? Like, we can do the best that we can, but you have to be kind of consistent with it so that over time, your body can function better.
Yeah, we talk about consistency a lot at Element. Working with patients and customers who are looking to support their bodies in new ways. I mean, maybe it's not new nutrition, but thinking about it and something I've really thought a lot about around dosage, consistency, being compliant. A lot of things us athletes are usually pretty terrible at or require someone else to keep us on track. From your opinion, like what do athletes often get wrong about this process? What are some of the pitfalls that don't allow us to be as consistent?
A lot of it, like you said, is the ability of the athlete to maintain it themselves. So, as an athlete, you go through life kind of doing what your parents and coaches tell you to do. They create everything from your training program to what you're eating. And then when you get out into the real world, so let's say you've gone off to college or you're out of college or you're a aging athlete who's trying to keep up with marathons and club sports, things like that. It's having the ability to program for yourself, which gives you the time to do it. The secondary part of it is that oftentimes we don't eat alone, if that makes sense. You've got a spouse, maybe, you've got kids, you've got different people within your community that you're sharing your life with who aren't necessarily pushing after the same goals that you are. So let's say that you're pushing to do a triathlon, but your husband or wife doesn't care at all. Trying to get that person to say, like, okay, I want to focus on these macronutrients that are heavier in proteins and fats and lower in gluten and dairy and sugar. They may not have the same goals that you do. So having the ability and self control to work both with the people that you're eating with and for yourself can be really very difficult. So that's where things like supplementation, water intake, probiotics, those are things that you can implement yourself to help your terrain to be able to be as functioning as possible for what you're trying to achieve with your body athletically, even if it's harder to maintain control over other things dietarily because you're not on your own.
Yeah, it's like knowing the land, right? You may not be able to change some of those factors. What can you control? What is going to require maybe some deviation from the rest of the environment that the person is in? I love that because, once again, if we go back to the experience of the cumulative effect of an injury or cumulative stress, right? There's not going to be just one moment to focus on. It's almost psychological in a way, and sort of apropos for the gut microbiome with the gut brain axis being able, as you said, 70 to 80% of your immune system lives in your gut microbiome. I think it's somewhere up 85 to 90% of the dopamine that your brain receives comes from the gut microbiome. And maybe let's go deeper into that. What are you learning that you want to share with the audience around the microbial communities that we live synergistically with, and what are you excited about as we move forward into this new era of nutrition?
Well, what we've learned is that there are a multitude of different, essentially, nervous systems within your gastrointestinal system. So we know that we've got our central nervous system, our peripheral nervous system, the autonomic nervous system. However, what they're learning is that functionally, there's a whole community within our GI tract that's working in ways that we didn't know about before. Within our mesenchyme, there's another sense of tracking of information and sharing of information that's happening that are we weren't researching before. And on a closer level, it's not as simple as, oh, eat food, it's broken down, it's absorbed, use it or poop it, right? But what we've learned is that we work in concert with all of these different microorganisms, both intercellularly and extracellularly. So everybody knows all about the mitochondria and the powerhouse of the cell and how it's creating ATP for energy for us, right? Like that's been just pushed into people's heads since they were in elementary school, right? However, what we've learned is that there's this whole other complex community of microorganisms that work together to help us break down nutrients on a more cellular level and then provide a barrier between kind of the outside world of what we've taken into our bodies and what is allowed to permeate into our gastrointestinal tract. So it's kind of like our first line of defense in that these microorganisms help us to be able to better utilize this the fuel that we're giving our bodies. So that can be as simple or as complicated as you want to make it, but I find it so fascinating in that creating an environment or a microbiome that works with you instead of against you can change everything. If you have bad microorganisms, so like right now, I'm working on trying to restore and repair my gut after having the stomach flu last week. And so I'm taking a little extra of my probiotics. I'm taking a little extra of different supplements that help to heal those enterocytes so that they can work with me instead against me. Um, we've learned, oh, go ahead.
No, no, keep going.
just we've learned that our bodies don't work best alone, right? It's the same way that as an athlete, most of the time we don't work best alone. We need coaches, we need teammates, we need crew. And the microbiome can be our very best support system. It can be our very best pit crew, or it can work against us if we're not helping it as well. Like if we're not providing it with the right sort of input, it can create gas and bloating and discomfort and malabsorption, or it can help us to be able to break things down, to be able to absorb things better, to fuel our bodies more effectively. So I find it fascinating.
Oh, so do I. I mean, there was, the epiphany moment of like, wait, I'm eating food and I just thought my body absorbed it.
Yeah, like in
I
and
I
out,
missed
right?
I missed out on something so important, and that opened my eyes. And I had always kind of thought, okay, yeah, yes, I know about bacterias, I know about microbes, and I know that they can be beneficial. Often people, deep cleaning their home too often can result in autoimmune challenges, and then the opposite, right? Too dirty, what's the middle ground there? And then, okay, I have a microbial universe that's, it's probably not true in these words, like sitting in between the food that I eat and my body receiving those nutrients. But the other kind of aha moment was, which you alluded to, right? These microbes are, they're communal. They are they can be both beneficial and non-beneficial, but there's something inherent, like watching a forest grow. It's just like, wow, it's beautiful. And nobody hedged it, nobody tried to like prune it, nobody tried to, it just, the forest grows and the forest looks beautiful. And we have this diversity of microbes that is a beautiful thing. If you smile at your gut, there's a meditation, you smile at your gut, and then the gut smiles at you, and that produces serotonin and happy, good feelings and dopamine. And you're like, wait, that sounds like magic. But there's real connection points here that I think we ought to allude to, because you're saying, no, there's multiple versions of these nervous systems that are signaling to our anatomy that you're in a safe place, you're in the right place to perform better, you're in balance, right? And so, you know, looking at the gut microbiome as an internal pharmacy, not just what I'm digesting, really changed my mindset. Maybe you could speak to that. Do you feel like the gut microbiome is an internal pharmacy, and what does that look like in terms of supporting your athletes and patients?
Oh, 110%. And I like to think of it as our second brain, and that it is creating all of these different neurotransmitters, creating all of these different immune modulators. It is as in charge of how our bodies are going to perform as what we are trying to get our bodies to do. So, especially from an athletic point of view, you're not an athlete only when you're trying to do an athletic performance. That is the biggest thing that I preach to most of, especially my student athletes, is that, yeah, most of the time you're a student, but you're also always an athlete. So when you're trying to get your body to be able to push more functionally to perform better, you have to fuel it better all of the time, not just during that performance. And so part of that is working alongside with your team, right? So your team inside of your GI tract needs fuel too. It needs support. It needs your help to be able to push further. And so that when you are taxing yourself more, it's like, all right, it's go time. I want to do this for the rest of you. Um, we've learned over time that so much of how our body performs is directly interconnected with how our gastrointestinal tract is functioning. And that if you are trying to push yourself to the limit, you're not going to be able to do so unless your GI tract is also able to do so. It's not just a muscle performance thing.
Yeah, let's double click on that really quickly. Because it's a really good point you're making. The the kind of common functional testing that people are doing. Blood testing seems to be on the rise. People are really trying to figure out how to dial in their what are the vitamins, what are the minerals that I need to increase, decrease, find balance on. But where does the gut microbiome play in this? And are there sharing capabilities between the information that people are receiving in their blood work with how well balanced their gut microbiome is or isn't?
Absolutely. So it has become excessively common to get blood work done and have 300 different things checked to see, okay, do I have vitamin D? Do I have vitamin B? Where am I at with my magnesium? Where am I at with my iron? And some of those things are, straightforward. If you are deficient in vitamin D, you're going to be tired. If you are deficient in iron, you can have all kinds of different sorts of anemias and your body won't function well. But for the most part, what we often see with people is that there's no glaring red flags on their blood work. And that's where they're frustrated. That's why they've spent hundreds of dollars on saying, okay, test everything. But what I often like to say is check your inflammatory markers first. Because if your body is a little on fire, meaning that, let's say maybe you fluctuate between diarrhea and constipation all of the time, not enough for you to warrant an endoscopy and looking for Crohn's or ulcerative colitis. There's not something big, bad, and scary happening. But there's a small fire that's burning within your GI tract, and it's making it so that, yeah, you've got a little bit low or a little bit high, or you're functionally high or functionally low on all these different blood tests that you're looking for. And instead of adding 15 to 40 different supplements that you take throughout the day, where some are fasting and some are eating, start with how can I make it so that my body is taking in what I'm giving it prior to doing all these specialized small minerals and supplementation. So what I try to tell people to look at is like, okay, let's look at the inflammatory markers. If things there are high, what step one is how stressed are you? What's within your control to be able to try to calm your body and soul? And then what are you eating? How is your gut microbiome? I usually tell people to start with, okay, I want you to try to avoid the big three with gluten, dairy, sugar. Add a solid probiotic in that will help to balance your microbiome. Even if there aren't major aberrations within it, it can always be supplemented and improved. Give that 3 weeks. See if you can create some healing. And then if we're still having the multitude of issues, okay, we'll do the blood work again and look and see. But most of the time, it's not that you have 15 different aberrations within your blood work that are slightly off. It's that you've got a small fire that's burning within your GI tract, and that has to be quenched before everything can heal and absorb. Because it doesn't matter how many things you're taking if your body can't absorb them. You're just going to poop it all back out.
Boom. If you learned anything from this podcast, what Dr. Cora just said is so prevalent. And definitely speaks, athletes, we love to perform. We love to win. We love to compete. Would you say that that's part of the fire? And how does an athlete see this differently? How might like what might you tell an athlete who is saying, "Yeah, but I don't have time to do that. Uh, I've got to perform in 3 weeks, 2 weeks, tomorrow. Well, what can I do to bring myself into some balance, even though my performance fire needs to be engaged."
Well, for me, oftentimes, because I'm a sports rehabilitation chiropractor, the the main reason that folks are coming into me is that there's some sort of physical pain, right? So the best example that I can think of is that I've got a soccer player who has been playing pro for 3 to 5 years, and now he's going back to play in college so that he can use his skills to pay for school. But now that he is at school, his diet has changed, his um, practice schedule has changed. He's trying to maintain both coaching and playing himself plus school. And he has a recurrent rib sprain. So he is often irritated in through his mid thoracic spine. And he said, "This is on fire." We tracked it back to, okay, now that he's in school, he's slouching more because he's sitting at a desk and he's pulling in because his stomach is chronically irritated because the quality of the food that he's eating has gone down significantly, plus his stress has gone up. So, yeah, we talked to him about changing the types of foods that he's eating, when he's eating, trying to get better hydration. But I also pair it alongside with, okay, well, if we're going to get you adjusted, we're going to do massage, we're going to do stretching. We've got targeted things that we want to approach it from an acute point of view, but also a chronic point of view. And that what can we do right now that will calm things? And what can we do long term to make sure that this isn't a recurrent problem that's coming again and again and again? Because look, he has to go and play this weekend, right? Like he needs to show up and run and not be able to take deep breaths in without his rib hurting. So for me, most of the time, it's a multifactorial of what can we do to acutely calm things down? And oftentimes that's adding in supplementation like turmeric or um, magnesium, right? Like things that are fast acting that your body can absorb and use to be able to decrease an acute inflammatory condition, but also that are additive as we're working on dealing with the actual root of the issue. Does that make
Yeah,
sense?
yeah, so twofold, right? So kind of like what's the acute change that we can manage? What can we control in this moment, i.e., get an adjustment, try and eat better um, in the situation, but then also, kind of future casting, what are the habitual patterns that we can start to create that are going to be supportive of a new foundation? At least that's what I'm hearing from you.
Absolutely. Yeah. Like, how can we create both building blocks that you can work off of, but acutely take care of the issue as well so that you can still show up and show off.
Yeah, and so on that note, right, like what has changed in the last 5 to 6 years, 3 years, maybe something that's changed in the last few months? I certainly have myself seen a change in uh, athletes looking at, or just people in general, humans trying to better their lives and their health, moving away from in just kind of kitchen sink ingredient supplementation into more targeted nutrition. Would you agree?
Absolutely. Yeah. At first, there was always a battle when I first started practicing a decade ago of being like, if you can't read on the back of the label and understand what any of these ingredients are, and you've got 50 different ingredients in this drink that you're drinking before you go and work out, or these goos that you're taking, or just the level of processing within your regular food was so high that I would have to battle people being like, does that sound like food to you? Do any of those ingredients sound like things that you can identify as food? To where, especially now, I think people are paying more attention to the fact that food additives, food dyes, processing, all of those things are creating more inflammatory processes. And they want to look at whole foods, they want to look at whole vegetables, they want to understand what they're eating and where it's coming from. And it's been a wonderful and welcome shift to where people understand that in order for their bodies to perform well, they need to be able to fuel them well. Now, there's also been a massive shift where people are getting a little bit, in my opinion, too hyper focused sometimes on their macronutrients to where it becomes obsessive, and that's not necessarily a good thing. But I think in general, there's definitely been a shift towards wanting to understand where their food comes from and how it's serving their bodies more so than there used to be.
That's such a great point. And serving their gut microbiome, right?
Yes.
Um, I have a theory that I want to run by you, and I'm not saying we have to know the truth here, but I've been thinking. It kind of hit me a couple months ago. You're eating food, right? And let's say you eat a food that's highly processed. You're out, you're hungry, you know, for whatever reason, a bag of chips is like, the thing that you eat. Does it? is the bag of chips really that unnutritious for the human, or and is it really the fact that it's so processed and these things that we're considering harmful to humans are actually harmful to the microbial community and therefore harming the human? Does that make
Uh,
sense?
Absolutely. Well, I think it's additive, right? So depends on what's in the chip. If you're looking at, let's say, like a potato chip, inherently potatoes aren't bad for you, right? Like their starches
Yeah,
have been
right.
converted to sugars, which can cause
Sure.
glucose spikes and things like that. However, there's also, good vitamins and nutrients within almost anything that grows in the earth, right? You can find a benefit. However, what kind of oil was it cooked in? Was it baked or was it fried? Is it fried in some sort of canola oil, which is going to irritate your gut microbiome and also not be very bioavailable and or higher in omega-6s instead of omega-3s that create more inflammation within your body, right? Like it's down to the if you look at the macronutrient of it, yeah, potato's fine. If you look at the micronutrient of it, the what's it created? What kind of cascade is it going to set off within your body? It's different, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, no, I'm not saying it's more nutritious, or less nutritious. I'm just, it kind of I either use the word cascading effect. And so sometimes I feel like when I'm educating athletes or individuals around, the what they're eating, how it's supportive, what are we going to do to start to kind of come into balance? There's a confusion around, oh, that food's bad for me. It has red dye 6 or whatever that thing is. And it's like, actually it's the preservatives, or it's not supporting a healthy, diverse microbial community, which in turn, when your gut microbiome is in a healthy, balanced state, is producing all of these pharmaceutical metabolites, right? Your short chain fatty acids, the serotonin, the all the different nootropics that people are taking, and even vitamins and amino acids. Our bodies are set up, our microbial communities are set up to supply these things to our bodies in the right dosage at the right time. And to your point, if we just throw the kitchen sink at it, we don't know what's working, what's not working, and we may be getting not the right dosage, too much, too little. you know, it's very difficult to know exactly what and how much of what the body needs. But if we allow our gut microbiomes to do that for us, there seems to be more regularity, more balance over time, more ability to be under stress and manage it better, um, putting ourselves in, quote unquote, the best place possible to perform, to succeed. And I just find that incredibly fascinating because I don't think we've looked at nutrition from that angle up until the last, I don't know, couple of years. I mean, is that true?
I would say it all depends on who's been looking at it, right? So, naturopathic physicians and doctors have been looking at it for, the last 5 or 6 decades. It's all on whether or not it's broken into mainstream, right? I would say as a whole, our society has started to pay more attention. I really think since the pandemic, right? People were scared and confused and not sure how to make sure they were going to be okay. And that's when we really started hearing more about terrain theory and like, okay, yeah, 80% of the time, eat well, sleep well, exercise. And so that when 20% of the time you want to go eat that bag of chips or you want to go have a fun night out with friends or you run into a stomach bug at a party that your body handles it okay, is able to tolerate the onslaught that you've thrown at it and recover from it well. And I think that in general, the public is starting to look into that more. And I hope that it only continues because I think the more education that we have about the way that our bodies work and function, the better we can fuel them and the less apprehension and fear there can be surrounding it.
Wow, beautifully said. It's not a one size fits all. You're gonna have to use your intuition and support yourself through a little bit of knowledge, a little bit of education, a little bit of experimentation, but in a place and a space where more times than not, there's a positive outcome. Um, Kind of like learning how to balance on one leg, right? You don't want to do that when you're trying to navigate being on a pier at the ocean or something, right? Like do that in a safe environment where you can take small but mighty steps towards a more positive, more balanced future. Um, Man, amazing, amazing conversation, Dr. Cora. Before we end, is there anything else you'd like to share about yourself, your work, what you're passionate about, or what do you feel are the biggest takeaways from today's conversation?
Sure. I mean, I'm very lucky in that I, with the support of my husband, have built a clinic that I work with athletes of all sizes. I work with people of all sizes and performance. And I think at the end of the day, we're all athletes, right? Everyone's moving their body as we move through the world. And I think that if we try to think of things in a long term longevity point of view, we have to try and go forward with some intention and some joy, and that you've got all of these different little things that are happening within your body to support you. And if you work with them, they'll work with you, right? Like you've got your community of your friends, your neighbors, but you also have your community within your body. And that if you serve your microbiome well, if you do things that will help yourself, you're better able to perform better and to be a better part of your external community too, because your body is working and functioning better and you're going to be a happier, healthier person for it. So,
Community wins. Community
community wins.
wins. Yeah. Well, speaking of which, if you're listening and you're in the Chicago region or visiting the Chicago region, Dr. Cora is in the suburbs of Chicago. You can find her at rightfamilyspine.com. That's the Right Family Spine and Sports Medicine. Dr. Cora, thank you so much for being on the podcast today. Your knowledge and your experience really speaks to the type of individual that you are, and I'm so grateful to have you here today on this podcast.
Well, thank you so much for having me and for creating a product that I can so comfortably and happily promote to my patients.
Amazing. Thanks so much, and we'll see you next time on the Upstream Podcast. All right, bye for now.